negotiated, and therefore there will not be any public input at this meeting. So Steve, if you would, sir.
Mayor, thank you. Members of the council, taxing jurisdictions, pleasure to be here tonight. Pleasure to meet you all in person. I've been able to participate in a few virtual meetings, so it's good to actually be here and see you in person. Can everybody hear me all right sitting at the table?
No, I can't hear.
First of all, let me just introduce myself to you and the firm that we're with.
Could you speak up, sir?
It's a waste of time.
My name is Steve Etcher. I'm an economic development consultant for an advisor.
That audio is a waste of time.
My role in that capacity is to help communities develop and implement their economic development strategies. My entire career has really been spent helping rural communities find prosperity. And I've done that throughout my 37-year professional career, and I look forward to helping the city of Festus achieve their goals in terms of economic development opportunities as well. My role with your community tonight is to help you understand the incentive opportunities and the frameworks that are out there currently in state statute as it could potentially relate to an economic development project. My goal then will be to advise and understand incentive offers that are presented to you for consideration and contemplation, model out those impacts to your community, and help you reach a determination as to what you as a community wish to accomplish with an economic development incentive framework. To begin this process, I want to begin by giving a general overview of the various tools and programs that are available for local communities to use to incentivize economic development projects, including potential data centers. This review is intended just to make sure there's a clarity and understanding about the various programs. It might seem elementary to some of you, and if it is, I apologize in advance, but I just want to make sure there's a level set of the understanding of the programs and tools and opportunities that are presenting itself to you as a community. My goal is to help you as a community reach an agreement that provides the greatest benefit possible to your community. To start with, we're often asked, why are incentives even required as part of the economic development landscape? Well, I think there's a number of reasons that they exist. One is really to help the community compete, to win projects that they've identified as critical and positive impacts to their community. I think they're also used to help enhance and elevate the community impact a potential project could have on a community. It is used oftentimes to attract additional capital investment into your community, which obviously you know is what your tax rates are based off and your tax revenues generate from. They're also used oftentimes to help circulate dollars throughout your community, new dollars that are brought into your community and circulated, particularly through the construction phase. And then lastly, they're also used to create a certain level of certainty and predictability when it comes to tax revenues for you as a community and the taxing jurisdictions that are affected. So tonight what we're going to talk about is really kind of the overview of the incentives that are out there. We're going to look at what those incentives can be used to accomplish. We're going to talk about some key terms that are going to be used in the language, so hopefully we're all kind of talking from the same dictionary. We're going to talk about the taxing jurisdictions that could be impacted by these decisions. I'll give you a brief illustration of how that would manifest itself in terms of real dollars to you based on the order of magnitude that these projects could represent. And then we're going to talk about the tools that's out there, particularly comparing the opportunities under Missouri Statute Chapter 68 and Missouri Chapter 100, which are oftentimes the most common tools that are used in tax incentives. So first of all, I think as we go into this conversation tonight, one of the things that I want you to begin contemplating in your mind is what is most important to your community. When you think about the type of investment that's coming to your community and can come to your community, what is it that drives those decisions for you? Is it you want new jobs, you want more CapEx, you want high wages, you need property tax revenue, do you want sales tax generation? Do you want to make sure that there are community services and community benefits for our community residents? Do you want to build out your infrastructure, which could be water, sewer, roadways, bridges, etc.? Is it your educational institutions that you want to make sure are enhanced and enriched in these programs? Is it creating workforce development opportunities? Is it enriching and enhancing your emergency services? Or creating programs for special populations that exist within your communities? So I want you to be thinking as I'm talking today, what is it of that universe of ideas that you really want to elevate with the opportunity that is presenting itself to your community. But as we get going, and I've got these in the handouts for the members around the table today, a couple of key terms that I think it's really important that we understand a couple of key elements. I think that will enhance our ability to negotiate and discuss what it is you want from this project. The first term that you're going to hear referenced quite a bit is a PILOT, which is an acronym for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. And that is typically calculated on an incentive package around the unabated portion of the taxes, whether that's real estate tax or personal property tax. If a property or a project is held in public ownership, there's no tax due because of its public ownership structure. So that end user would then make a pilot payment or a payment in lieu of taxes to a negotiated amount to make sure there's tax revenues flowing back to those taxing jurisdictions. You will hear reference a term called community benefit agreement or community development agreement. This is an agreed upon set of terms that's often incorporated within the authorization of the tax incentives. What that often does is an agreed upon amount of benefit that's going to be provided to the broader community as a whole. And typically this is sometimes often beyond just the taxing jurisdictions that affect it. But oftentimes it lists very specific projects that you want to undertake, and those are then memorialized within a community benefit agreement. A performance agreement, you will hear reference on occasion as well as we work through this process. The performance agreement is a contractual obligation between the issuer of the incentive and the project team, whether that be the development team or the end user. The performance agreement will outline the very specific things that that entity must do to achieve the incentives that they've been offered. It typically will include a certain level of capital investment, a certain number of jobs or minimum number of jobs that they will create, and a certain wage threshold that those jobs must be paid in order to qualify to receive or to continue to receive the full allocation of that incentive. You'll also hear reference to infrastructure development agreements. And this is often used to memorialize the agreement between the community and the developer to privately fund necessary public infrastructure investments that need to occur to support the project. Those are often memorialized within this contract under what we call the infrastructure development agreement. You may also hear a reference to a term sheet or a development agreement. This is the initial document that basically frames up the incentive proposal. That in exchange for this investment, these jobs, these wages, etc., these are the benefits that we collectively as a community are willing to offer. And that is actually articulated in a term sheet that can then be executed by the various parties and the project can move forward in advance. You'll also hear reference to industrial revenue bonds, or IRBs. Industrial revenue bonds is often just a paper transaction, not a financial transaction, that takes the project scope, whatever elements that we include, whether that be real property or personal property or both, and it places it into public ownership. And that is done through this bond transaction, and those will be referenced on occasion as bonds or industrial revenue bonds. CapEx, that is the capital investment that is being planned by the proposed project. Typically, when we get the capital investment numbers from a project, they will be broken down between what they expect to spend in real property, brick and mortar, and personal property, equipment and machinery that's going to be placed within that. Now, it's really important to distinguish that the capital investment is not necessarily the final number that you need to be using to calculate what is my potential tax revenue. You need to be looking at what is the appraised value of that capital investment. What is the actual taxable, tangible percentage of that CapEx that will hit our tax rolls. Oftentimes, for estimating purposes, we will usually use a factor of 60 to 80% of CapEx to account for transportation, soft costs, site development, things like that. And we'll talk about that later as we get into the actual modeling of what we project and estimate those tax revenues to be. But it's the appraised value that then is used by the county assessor to determine the assessed value. And then the assessed value, which is really, it's different for real property and personal property, but it's 32% of the appraised value becomes the assessed value, 33 1/3% of personal property's appraised value becomes assessed value. It is that tax rate per 100 that gets applied to those assessed values. So these are some of the key terms that we're going to be talking about, not just tonight, but throughout the entire process. And it's important that each of you understand so you can talk a little bit more knowledgeably in negotiating and developing an incentive structure that makes sense for your community. Jumping ahead, there's actually 4 key components. I'm trying to break this as simple as I can so people can have some clarity around what we're doing. But these are complex projects. I'm not trying to minimize the project by simplifying things, but they're complex. And I want to make sure everybody understands what we're dealing with. But when it comes to data center industry, there's primarily 4 buckets of direct tax revenue. And I'll come to those directives in a minute. In addition to what we're going to talk about tonight, there's going to be an enormous amount of indirect benefit as well. Construction wages, permanent jobs, things like that. We're not even talking about those in this formula right now. We're going to be really talking about the direct taxes that are paid, not the economic benefit of the project. We will include those benefit calculations in our models for you. But for tonight's purposes, I want to talk about the 4 key buckets that incentive programs can work towards or assist with on a project like this. The first and most obvious one is your real estate property taxes. This is the brick and mortar and fixed assets that would be part of the development. It is the things that are actually fixed on the site, that's non-movable. That is a big part of a data center project. These are large buildings, high-powered buildings. A lot of infrastructure goes into those. A lot of assets are fixed on those facilities as well, including generation facilities. Those typically will fall into your real property tax bucket. That's where that money is going to flow to and from. The second bucket is your personal property taxes. This is the investment that the company is going to be making in all of their furnishings, their business personal property, and the equipment that resides inside these data halls. Oftentimes what we have seen on data center projects is the level of investment in personal property is at times a factor of the real property. It's usually double, if not more, on these typical projects. So personal property is a separate revenue bucket that will be coming into your taxing jurisdictions as well. And that is distributed to all the taxing jurisdictions that have a property tax assessment. And I've got a list of those in your packet. We'll run through those here in just a second. The third bucket that's critical to a project like this, and particularly in the city of Festus, is your gross receipts tax. Oftentimes this is just referenced as your franchise fee on electrical sales. You have a 4.5% franchise fee or gross receipts tax on the electricity that is sold within your community. So that's going to be a fairly significant revenue stream for a project of this magnitude. A project like this is going to be generating or going to be utilizing an enormous amount of electricity. Is going to have a very substantial gross receipts tax that comes payable back to the city. And of course, the gross receipts tax is payable to the city of Festus. That's who implements that. That does not get redistributed to other taxing jurisdictions. That is the sole ownership of the city. And then the fourth bucket is sales tax. There's a lot of sales tax that can be collected through any type of development project, and particularly a data center project. But we're going to talk more specifically about sales tax here in a little bit. But your current rate in sales tax is about 9.35% of all the qualified sales that can be applied to this project could be the fourth bucket of funding for a data center. The reason I present it like this, it's really those 4 buckets where we have the opportunity to get creative on how do we incentivize a project like this. What do we want to use out of each one of those buckets to create the win opportunity, not only for the community, but also create a beneficial opportunity for the project itself. Around each of those 4 buckets, there's programs out there that have been created to allow communities to create incentives in each of those buckets. And I'm going to just quickly talk about each of those here this evening. Under real property, you've got primarily 2 programs that work well to provide any type of tax incentive around real property. That's Chapter 68 under the Missouri statute and Chapter 100 under the Missouri statute. The difference between the 2 is under Chapter 100, the city would be the authorizing entity. Under Chapter 68, any state-established port authority would be the authorizing jurisdictions. The terms of a Chapter 100 vary depending on the type of project and scale of project, but typically municipally based programs, we're seeing them typically run around 20 years of benefits using Chapter 100. Under Chapter 68, they can go a bit longer than that if so desired. All of those projects, whether it's real property or personal property, essentially takes that property off of the tax rolls through public ownership and requires that payment in lieu of taxes to offset whatever it is that you want to receive as a community versus what you want to provide as an incentive to the project. Under personal property, again, you got those two primary programs, Chapter 100 and Chapter 68. And again, the same rules apply in terms of who is the authority that authorizes that. The terms and the lengths, the percentage of those abatements run pretty consistent across the board. And again, they do require some level of pilot payment on those programs. The sales and use tax. Sales tax on a data center is a bit unique in the fact that the state of Missouri authorized the state sales and use tax data center exemption program a few years back. What that allows is for the state of Missouri to offer to qualified projects 15-year exemption on sales tax. Now you can also get sales tax exemption under Chapter 68 and under Chapter 100, but sales and use tax under the state's program is the most far-reaching. It includes not only construction materials and qualified equipment purchases, but it also includes exemption on sales tax on utilities. So that is a program that the state instituted a few years back for the purpose of and benefit of attracting data centers to the state of Missouri. The gross receipts and franchise fees, that program does not have an established incentive. That is a municipal discretion. It is completely up to you if and when and how any incentives would be tied towards your gross receipts tax. On the next slide, you can kind of see the breakdown of your taxing jurisdictions. Obviously, your school system is your largest taxing entity within the community. You've got the city, you've got the college, you've got the merchant surtax is kind of the commercial tax on business personal property. So we don't have an inventory tax in Missouri. That is its substitute. You've got a number of other property tax rates there that's articulated for you. You've got about a 5.4892 assessment tax rate on your assessed valuation here in the city of Festus. Your sales tax, as you can see there as well, you've got a 9.35% sales tax for qualified sales within the community. 4.225% of that is generated by the state of Missouri. 3% is the city of Festus. 1% of that, 1% or of that 3%, 1% is for general purposes, 1% is for public safety, 1/4% for capital improvements, and 1/4% for stormwater and parks, and 0.5% is used for transportation. And then Jefferson County has a 1.625% sales tax instituted, and the ambulance district has a 0.5% sales tax instituted. And as I mentioned earlier, your gross receipts tax are 4.5% of qualified sales. So that kind of gives you a picture of the taxing pipeline for your community. The next slide, what I wanted to just provide for you was a general illustration. A lot of people, I don't think, completely comprehend the order of magnitude that a data center can represent within a community. So I wanted to give you just a really brief illustration here that you guys can use and do your own math beyond it. So what I've got for you is a tax calculation illustration for real property and one for personal property, based on what would $1 billion investment in real property mean in terms of property tax revenues, real estate property tax revenues for the various taxing jurisdictions. And I've got it modeled out there for the first 5 years by taxing jurisdiction, so you can kind of see the order of magnitude. But essentially at the end of year one, we would expect about a $10.5 million property tax payment per $1 billion of investment. So if we're dealing with multiple billions, you can do the multiplication based on the factor of that level of investment. And in these calculations, you can see there as well, we've discounted that investment, capital investment, to 60% of its cost to account for soft costs that may not represent taxable tangible property. So we're not overestimating our projections for you here this evening. On the next page, I've got the same kind of scenario for you, but on personal property. Again, we are taking personal property under self-reported value, so assuming $1 billion of personal property, you can see what that really means. The one thing that you need to be aware of on personal property is a lot of this equipment is going to be highly depreciable property. Most of it's going to be on probably a 5-year asset life. So in this illustration, this is illustration alone. On this illustration, we're showing you what $1 billion means per year, showing a 5-year depreciation schedule. Now, what we have seen in a number of projects is there's a refresh of that equipment periodically. Maybe it's every 3, maybe it's every 5, maybe it's every 10 years. But every time there's a refresh of that equipment, that value will reset. But for the purposes of illustration, I want to show you kind of what that means in terms of potential tax revenues to your taxing jurisdictions. And again, because of the value depreciation, in the first 5 years, you got a high of a little over $16 million of tax revenue that drops down to just under $2 million by the end of year 5 because of depreciation. So there's going to be a bit of a roller coaster, as you do with anything when you have new assets placed in service. So you want to encourage a frequent and consistent refresh of that equipment so we can get those property values pushed up to a much higher level of calculation. The last slide there that I want to talk about before we get into really kind of what we need out of this meeting tonight is really just a comparison of Chapter 68 versus Chapter 100. Those are the two different tools that are available for economic incentives that communities can avail themselves to. Port authorities, as I mentioned previously, are autonomous to any local unit of government. They are established by the Missouri State Legislature, whereas Chapter 100 is really the function, issuance of that is a function of the local unit of government, or 68 is the function of the Port Authority. In most cases that I've ever been involved with, there's been great collaboration between the Port Authority and the local community. The Port Authority physically doesn't do anything of this order unless they have collaborative approaches with that local city. They may not advance the project unless they get the city's blessing. So we will work very closely with the Port Authority at 68 as the preferred tool as we move forward. But know that even though they are independent, there's often a spirit of collaboration and cooperation to make these deals work. So before I get into next steps, any questions about that unfortunate, lengthy explanation of tax incentives? All right. If you do have questions, please reach out to me. I want to be a resource so you can go into this process fully aware, fully knowledgeable of the tools at your disposal and what your role, responsibilities, and capabilities can do. So really what I would like to figure out tonight for you all is, one, what is your priority? What is it that you want out of these types of projects for your community so we can incorporate that into our incentives? Discussion with the end user. Obviously, as we look at incentive offers and kind of model those out, we will present to you all of the details of what their projections will mean to you as a community. But as we go through that process, we want to make sure that we are addressing and incorporating your community's needs into that term sheet, into that development agreement, because now's the time to put that list together. So if I can, I would love to hear what you feel is of highest value to your community that we need to embrace as we begin these discussions. Yes, sir.
Steve, I apologize. I made you caught the horse. So, I apologize. I'm usually loud. So, before we dive into hardcore, when do we present our requirements, additional requirements on a development agreement, for example, setbacks? What stricter noise requirements, larger setbacks, tree lines. I don't want to get too deep, waste everybody's time. I just need your guidance. When do we tell the developer, the user, these are our requirements?
There's two ways to address that. And unfortunately, I haven't had enough time to research your entire process. You can either do that as part of the development agreement that's what we're entering into now, or you can do that through your planning and zoning process that require those setbacks and conditions. But either one is done. So now's the time and more. So now's the time to add those.
Okay, so we give it to our attorney, the attorney presents it to you. I don't know the process.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, we'll continue to have discussion. What does the community want in terms of those additional development agreements? Please send those to Brian. Brian and I will then sit down and review all of those.
So, there's one more question. So, we're throwing something out. So, let's say I would like to see a buyback program in case there is a noise issue, health issue, whatever. Give that to Brian, that comes to you. So nothing's off the table if I'm understanding you correctly. Whatever each one of us wants, throw it out there and work through it.
I would say nothing is off the table until we take it off the table.
Okay.
So what we're talking about here is just not capital expenditures, big CapEx projects, for instance, as far as allocating them and prioritizing them. by the city. But it's other, I wouldn't say softer items, but it's items that will make this project work for the communities at hand also.
Yeah, I would maybe challenge you to think of it this way. Don't think of this as you're putting together your Christmas list to mail to the North Pole. I would say, step out of your role as a city leader and say, as a community patron, what do I want for my community? Because I think it's going to be easy for your staff to say, here's all the capital improvements we have within the jurisdictions of the municipal government. But think broader. What does our community really need to define itself as becoming more prosperous? And maybe it's, we need more opportunities to train our workforce, or maybe we need more opportunities for our seniors. I don't need a list of projects. I need ideas that you think enrich the community.
I think, at least from my point of view, I'm gonna lean on you a little bit, because this has kind of been a town that has gone from being sleepy, in the past decades to now being an extension of the city. And there are things that, I don't have knowledge of, like fiber optic lines, for instance, for bathrooms, things along those lines that, I've done a little research and I know that they can have quite a payoff for a community, but we don't know, because this is new. This is new.
Sure. And to that point, just a quick sidebar. A data center project is going to build up robust infrastructure to support the project, which includes obviously robust power, generation, distribution, and transmission. But they're going to also need a lot of fiber to power that facility. That's going to be a really unique opportunity for the community to enhance the broadband within your community. Now, you don't have to say we want broadband deployed on every street within the city, but just say we want to expand our broadband capabilities. That's really important. And recognize also, you're going to have the revenue coming in, particularly through your gross receipts tax, that's going to give the city enormous flexibility to go do projects that they've never dreamed about in the past. But yeah, enhancing broadband to everybody that's a resident, I think that's a fantastic project that needs to be articulated.
So you have experience in this, you've done this before. And this is our first rodeo, really, with this stuff. So, appreciate some hand-holding online.
Steve, I'm not lost for words, so most know me, unfortunately, gotta bear with me. So I want a community improvement program. I want grants available for homes, for those people who meet certain income levels, or apply, new site. So my priority would be a community improvement program, enhancing fire, EMS, our parks. I can throw a lot of crap against the wall in about 5 minutes.
So rather than like a laundry list of projects, let's identify what are the financial resources we need to attack this laundry list of projects. We don't need to articulate we want to run a sidewalk between 2nd and 3rd Street into an agreement, but we can articulate we need money set aside in the community improvement account to enable you to do that.
I'd like to see $1 million a year put aside for our community. There you go.
Yeah. What we've seen in other projects we're working on, a lot of the community and infrastructure improvements were things that the community couldn't address. We're building new roads, we're building grade separated rail crossings, which is out of any community budget pretty much. We've got one where we're setting aside an account that will be used to fund taxing entities outside of the footprint of the project. Because the project benefits an entire county, but a lot of taxing jurisdictions don't get to reap that benefit. So there's a revenue sharing opportunity that's in there as well. It's really, I don't want to sound like Santa Claus, but what do you want? What will make your community prosper?
There's a lot of things, but like you said, that's what we'll discuss with our companies and other councils and see what we come up with.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of options with that kind of money to benefit the whole city and county and everybody.
Agreed.
And I don't want to ramble all the wish, but that's just going to take some fine tuning and thinking what's, there's definitely a lot of things I'd love to see. Not only our town, but for around here, all.
Those are great ideas.
Dennis, is there anything that you would like to throw out?
Well, I got a lot of ideas, but I think you guys chance first.
I'm still working through it. So not to give you a laundry list, or we just give you broad ideas? I'm a little confused.
I would like broad ideas tonight, but we'll get the entire list. Please forward that to Brian, and we'll be vetting that, and obviously the council will need to take action. What is these, that makes it,
So I say I want STEM programs in college and high school.
perfect, love that idea.
Okay, and
I really kind of expected her to say that, though.
Well, she knows me, she knows my job, so.
I actually was going to say, like, workforce development for us, I think that's all encompassing, we could get in the weeds of what that looks like, but programs that develop students within also in our community, and so here locally, providing these programs to our towns, so that's huge. Both for us as a high school, but then Jefferson College is right in our backyard.
To that, and the institution, Jefferson College has a unique ability to be on the forefront of that workforce training. Our ability to train and retrain, just think about, as you mentioned, this 5-year asset life of some of this equipment. It's going to be, it means that stuff is going to turn over really quick. These fiber optic infrastructure, that gives us a unique opportunity to partner with our high schools, as we have for decades, and train not only the workforce that's going to be working with these, but those that are going to be coming up. So I think that's a good opportunity that exists now. We really capitalize on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of these projects. You're gonna create a pipeline coming right out of your school, high schools, into your junior colleges, and right into the workforce. They're gonna be trained specifically for what these industries need. And what I have seen in the other projects is they are very, very supportive of partnering with the local schools, at whatever level. To say, we will provide you the curriculum, we'll provide you the professor, we'll provide what you want. We just provide the student. We will train them so they're qualified to get these jobs when they come out of either high school or.
Jefferson College has an ability to turn that over quickly.
Good.
Through our workforce development program.
Good.
Everybody go back to the question. My only comment to the group is, if you have something in your mind that would make Festus in the region better, your answer, if you do not ask for it, the answer will be no. You're not gonna get it. But if you ask for whatever it may, just make sure it's reasonable and that it will benefit the region, and put it on the table, because as Steve has indicated, there's gonna be things that you're gonna put on there that are not gonna be practical or reasonable, but, you know, if you don't ask, you're not gonna hear the words yes, ever.
Yeah.
So just ask, think about it, Google it or chat GPT it or whatever you wanna do, but make your darn list. And then run it through some data center somewhere.
I think one of the most unique tasks that I've been involved with is the rural county does not have enhanced 911 services. And they're like, we've got to fix that. And so as part of the agreement, they will be getting a brand new enhanced 911 system for the entire county and all the equipment to operate. So these are the types of things that could be possible.
So Steve, from the city of Festus standpoint, we don't have triangulation, and we're now being in Texas, so that would be a list for our 911, since we're now part of Jefferson County 911.
I think now's a really good time to figure out what do we have to do to create a beneficial system, whatever that looks like.
You know, just as I sit here and I look at the two chiefs over there, I mean, there's always a, manpower problems with fire and with police. There's always communication problems. There's public safety concerns, of course. There's growth. There needs to be fire trucks. There needs to be firehouses. There needs to be new police facilities. And, you know, as an umbrella project, maybe we could look at that, for instance, and try and come up with a center. I don't know. You know, maybe there's auxiliaries, I don't know, but I think this is a possibility, a time that we could satisfy those. Maybe like cars, for instance, the way police go through cars every year, 3-4 cars. You know, could we have like some sort of fleet endowment or something along those lines, so that we would have to have property tax increases or tax increases, you know, to cover those in the future. So there's a multitude of things that can be done.
Yes, sir. Mayor, if I could get one person. For instance, in Jefferson County, we have a number of failing septic systems across the region. Pick spot, there'll be some failing there. You know, it might even be a request like, what you all think about, this does not apply to the city because your system is okay. But it might be something like, well, let's have an investment pool that people who live within the unincorporated, particularly maybe if there's some who live in the area that was just, unannexed or taken out of the county, to, as a source or a fund for helping them to invest in their personal infrastructure. And that's the kind of stuff you gotta think about, you know, you just gotta be open-minded and think about stuff, and it could benefit. And I'll be honest with you, there's people who have failing septic systems in Jefferson County who literally cannot afford to be compliant. Then you can help them. Now that's a county thing, that's not the city, but you gotta think that.
And kind of to Dennis's point, you know, as we're putting these ideas together, and we get to, and have a chance to model out what is the financial impacts of the proposed project, we'll be able to show every taxing jurisdiction what we estimate your tax increment will be. And we'll look at you, we'll ask you to say, look at what you're going to be getting, what can you achieve out of this list from that additional tax revenue, and what do you need additional assistance on? So you got a tax for the health fund, you got a tax for the parks, you got a tax for EMS right now, and public safety. And if that increment is not going to be sufficient, that's what we want to make part of our negotiation strategy.
If you in your model, do you have the ability to show, like, the city wants to roll out a tax reduction, cheaper water rates? Do you have an ability to model that?
We can model that, and that's the thing that we haven't even really mentioned tonight, that what we are experiencing with this level of increase in tax revenue, it's very likely that a number of taxing jurisdictions will roll back their tax rate, which benefits everybody in the community. I mean, the school district, I think the state minimum is what, $275? And if you get an extra, $8 million a year, you might have to roll back. So that benefits every single taxpayer. So it's going to be hard for us to predict with certainty what will those rollbacks be, because those are all determined individually by the jurisdiction. But we can definitely run the city's model for you.
Question for you though, how do we ensure the user doesn't apply for an exemption on their tax that is available? How do we prevent that in the future? Can an agreement ensure they can't exercise that right? Because I don't want entities start rolling back taxes and then 3 years down the road, the user now applies for exemptions and we're in a legal fight. How do we ensure that doesn't happen?
So whatever agreement you use, 68 or 100, will be a contractual agreement between the project and the authorizing entity. And that's going to be for a specified period of time. And it is fixed. I mean, you're not going to go in there and like, oh, we want more, we want less. This is what everybody's agreed to, and it's in. So you're not going to run the risk of 2 years from now saying, oh, we want to tweak those terms, we want to revise this. That's not how these agreements work. It will be fixed for its duration.
So if the state rolls out a new bill and it goes in force, we're more or less grandfathered.
What do you mean it's new bill?
So let's say that the Missouri current bill gets in legislation that says that when a data center comes in your community, you got to roll back 80%. So that's currently being discussed. How do we ensure that doesn't happen to the school if they roll their taxes back? This thing passes, next thing you know, Dr. Reed is now up against the wall. She just lost her extra funding because there's a state statute trump our contract.
The state statute does not trump your contract, but it will have to be, so if the state law says you have to roll back your taxes if you get a data center, you get so much revenue, my prediction would be that those entities are probably already rolled back to save the individual ratepayer that tax because of the revenue coming in. But we would have to model that. I think probably more realistic than that legislation moving forward is the notion that what if Missouri gets rid of personal property taxes? What do we do with that? Well, if it's a chapter 100 or a chapter 68 and you've abated part of the real, part of the personal, that entire tax bill goes away. So that's why a project like this provides enormous safeguards because of the revenue that they generate off of real property taxes. Those communities that don't have a large project like this, I'm honestly very concerned about how they would adjust to that type of legislation. But those are some very fine details that we can try to work in to provide additional security and safety.
So, in your estimation, in opinion, would it be better to do the pilots? Those would be guaranteed.
Well, a pilot is a payment in lieu of. So the pilots are done usually one of two ways. It is a percentage of whatever the tax bill would have been if normal taxes had applied. So let's say it's a 50% abatement, and so there's a pilot payment that's equal to 50% of that value. That's one way of calculating it. Some projects say what we want to have is a very fixed and predictable number. So we know over the life of the deal, the average payment in lieu of taxes is going to be $10 million. They just say, we're going to pay $10 million a year for the duration of the term, regardless of what property values do, regardless of what tax rates do. You can do it either way. What I will say, it's really hard to forecast what is that present value that needs to be consistent, because you don't know necessarily the value of equipment that's going to be put in there, the replacement schedule, and the depreciation and the future value of that. But there's a lot of places that do a fixed pilot, not based on the value. And we would entertain, I think the project could entertain either approach.
So recently, there's been a little bit of discussion on the federal level of requiring data centers to pay for or to basically supply their own power. With the majority of, or a lot of our taxing ability coming from the franchise fee, if that goes through later on to where we use that franchise fee taxing, is there some way that something could be written in there that they would have to pay a certain amount or whatever that we would be losing on that? Should that happen, or how would you handle that situation?
That one I'm going to have to give some thought. Right now you've got, because it's a regulated utility, you've got the separate rate structure, the tariffs, and the 15-year guarantee by that entity for that rate. So in all likelihood, this is not an issue for 15 years, because they've already agreed to pay for that much power. Regardless of what the federal law says, they're going to be on the hook with Ameren for 15 years at a specific rate. So we can give some thought to what happens year 16 and beyond. And we'll see what we can word in there that provides some protection.
And just to clarify one thing, I know I saw something there at one point in time that they said that they have to pay 80% of. Well, a lot of people are saying, well, they wish they could only pay 80% of their electric bill. They have to pay 100% of what they use, but they are guaranteeing that they will pay at least 80% of a certain amount, whether they use it or not, correct?
Yeah, they will have a contract, an electric service agreement with Ameren that says, I'm going to get X number of megawatts of power. And we agree to pay for 80% of that. If I use 0% of it, I'm still on the hook for 80%. But regardless what I use, I pay 100% of that cost, unless it's below 80%. If it's below 80%, I pay 80% of that.
So they're only using 50% of what they said they would, they pay 80%.
They pay 80%.
They're using all of what they said, they pay the full 100%.
They pay 100%. That is 100% correct. And the entity pays for all of the electrical upgrade and infrastructure that goes with that. The same thing would do with any water, wastewater, roadway to your site. We typically anticipate and expect that end user to bear all those costs of making the site.
So Steve, they have to run new water lines. Do we incorporate that the residents get the tap water? Because they're going to require large water mains. Instead of buying water from the city, we have excess water. Is that something you have seen in prior agreements, or if we do have some, we have along that road, we have housing there and residents. There are water pressure and sometimes water quality issues. So if they put a water tank in, I want all expenses on them. I don't want the city or the residents to pay a dime of their improvements.
Yeah, that's normal in this industry, to be honest. If there's an existing line there and they're going to replace with a larger line, then yeah, we would expect and require all those taps to be carried forward to a new line. Or keep them on a separate line and augment that line's flow with pressure. Yeah, that's a common expectation.
Chrissy, do you have any questions?
I'll bring up the fact that this is expected to be a very large development, of course, expected to bring quite a few jobs. But that point, we've got this on the table, we've also got James Harding on the table. So that's quite a few, jobs coming to this area in particular. So while the county and Chris interest the city, or taking a look at what James Hardy is really bringing, getting, of course, trucks in and out of those facilities, as well as the potential future employees, I think that is something that the city also needs to kind of take a look at. While this is kind of on the outskirts, and there is a traffic impact study being conducted, through all of that, it's more so after the fact of once this is finished being constructed, and people are trying to get to work, to and from, what does the city's infrastructure look like? What does the state's kind of infrastructure look like? How does that all partner together for that transportation of everybody getting to and from work? So I think there's aspects of transportation to definitely take a look at.
You said the project is doing a transportation study, or James Hardy is doing the transportation study?
This project,
Yes. Okay.
traffic accident.
So like the surrounding, I'm sorry.
Right. It's the results from that study should be incorporated into our negotiations.
Yeah.
When it's done, I agree.
Yes, but I'm also talking about the aspects of the internal kind of city structure of sure, trucks for construction, they're going to be getting through the site for the easiest means possible, probably 67. So at that point, yes, that's the city system, and that's going to be impacted through the traffic impact study. What I'm talking about is the aspect of everybody who may start working here from this facility in the area, and how people are going to be getting to and from work. So the increase of just to the area, the amount of residents, and even the housing and everything is really kind of blooming in this area. Let's take a look at that aspect. You know, how would they get to from the city's transportation system onto the state transportation system? What are some of those improvements that the city might need as it continues to blossom and really grow to get to these main points of contact with the state system? The other point, you know, just like the traffic impact study is going to show, can the state system even handle that much growth? Now, I think in this case, you know, we'll find those little improvements probably be done, but 67 is looking pretty good. So I'm not too concerned about that, and we'll take a look at whatever that proposes. But internally, as the city continues to grow with this and the amount of jobs in the area continue to grow, what are things that really need to be enhanced to take a look at? One of the things in particular Michael and I talked about and we'll continue to talk about is a proposed bridge over I-55. We've got A right now. Is there potential for another one to really expand and connect the city? So those are different things that I think the city needs to take a look at as far as how are the internal flow of residents really getting out to be able to get to all of these new jobs.
You know, I'd like to add what he said. So the project down there, it has to be able to sustain the viability of the streets and everything that are down there. And so that would be something that project would have to do. From my point of view, like when you're talking about how do they get from here to there, you know, I don't know much about this, but I think you can geocache like big trucks, for instance, because you're saying, you know, they're going to take the shortest way possible, and maybe they're not supposed to, but they might. So maybe they can only geocache, so that if people are doing what we don't want them to do, they can be held accountable to it. Because we don't want any more big trucks on our back roads. We don't want that. So, I'm with you. Keep them safe, keep them out of our neighborhoods.
And just to kind of your point, one of the low-hanging fruits that I would suggest we consider is we have a post-construction agreement that once the construction period is done, they go in and repair any streets that were impacted by the construction project.
Well, I was gonna ask for a type of a performance bond or a trailer to ensure that. To ensure the project's done, that we have the ability to go back in and make improvements. And also I could throw this out, because sometimes we get some concerns from residents. What happens is the closed 10 or 15 years. I don't want the city to be held with a development that's sitting there. I know it's highly unlikely, still I would be safeguarded. So I can see some type of a bonding or escrow account established for that. So if that was happening, then the city would be able to turn the site back to its natural state, or repurpose it for additional improvement or development.
I'm writing everything down, yeah. I think that gets a little more complicated, but I understand what you're trying to say. And we've encountered this question before, is, well, what happens if the data centers aren't brick and mortar? What if they're floating in satellites orbiting the planet? What do we do with that building? I'm like, that's a great opportunity for the community. These are very large structures. These are going to be very attractive to any other industry that is looking for a home. So I believe there's a great value in repurposing them to other manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, or even distribution facilities, because they will be well-powered, well-built, and the infrastructure is there to support substantial manufacturing operations if necessary. It will be a community asset, one way or the other, I agree, not a liability, but we can figure out how do we word that so there's not a future liability.
Is there any other questions or comments? Well, one thing that I know we're going to provide you with a list, a laundry list. But the one thing I want to say now is that the benefit of everybody. We are going to make sure that there is a 1,000-foot buffer zone between the closest house in Ashford Place, the subdivision next to it, a buffer zone of 1,000 feet, and not take the woods out. What's that? Or the ridge. So that if there is more noise than we anticipate, it won't bother the residents. The other thing is the sound, air, and vibration monitoring stations. You want to have some. Look up. And a closed water system so that we don't have to have an exorbitant, a big use of water. But the closed water system is a must. Is there any other comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion is passed. We are adjourned. Thank you to the public that came in to listen. You've been very respectful tonight, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Fucking snakes.
Did you call that or what?
Yeah.
I'll be damned.
Hey, not just a hat rack, my friend.
Get your
Yeah, sir. Man, that mayor struggled to get out 2 words in a row.
Hello, young man.
Oh my God!
Just wanted to say hi. Sorry, you're like, don't touch me. Okay.
No, you're fine. Hi, Mary.
It's
No,
good to see
you're
you.
always it's always good to see you. Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Good night.
You too, Mary. Thank you.
I love the like caution tape separating them from people.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, do you have a gun?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
see, that's the thing now. I think they're going to start wanting people at City Hall. That's going to be a problem for me.
Yeah.
You know? I like my remote control hole puncher.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Motion to allow Congress to City Hall. Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. They don't give a fuck.
No, they think they're gonna get whatever they eat, you know, whatever they want.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not trying to be like Santa Claus. Like, you literally are trying to be like Santa Claus.
When someone says something like that,
Yeah, like just ask for whatever you want. Yeah.
I would automatically, like, that would tell me to put the kibosh on this right away, because that's like snake oil. That's condo salesman 101.
Absolutely, that is 100% snake oil.
I don't need to look at that any further.
Like, don't ask me what this does.
Yeah.
It can do whatever, you know. Just ask me what your problem is. Whatever it is, it'll take care of it. You know, like, yeah, you're right. That is the ultimate snake oil. That's the South African guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I forgot his name. Yeah, I forgot his name all of a sudden.
I gotta find out. I still haven't looked into District 5 anymore. I need to.
There's a lot of people that jumped on that.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think there's a lady on there. I could swear I met her. No, I don't have it. She gave me a card. Elliot was her last name. And then, Tim Bennett, the P&Z guy. He is running for it now.
He's kind of on the fence about this stuff, though, ain't he?
You know, man, yeah. So he is. Yeah.
We need anti.
Yeah. He's not as blindly, you know, I'm not trying to speak for Tim, but I believe he's not as blindly into it as some of the other councilmen.
Well, I just posted.
Hey, Dan, right? Yeah, finally.
Nice
yeah.
to meet
Yeah,
you.
you as well. Here, let me pause this for a second.
Good, I'm doing